Hey everyone, it's at long last we are ready to do the Threadripper build. Um, I'm eager to get started, so I won't keep you here too long. But I can tell you, I'm pretty excited. Pretty excited to do this one. It's been a while since I built a computer from scratch, brand new, and and these components are pretty good. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not sure that I actually selected the components correctly. I think I did, but we will see, and we'll see how it turns out. We'll see what kind of problems I might run into and what it's going to take to sort of resolve them. But hopefully, things go well, and you see a good and we see a good result here. All right, let's get started. I did go with the H510 NZXT case again. Really like that one. Got the 29 over there on the lower right, the 2950 Threadripper. Two M.2 storage sticks. I did opt for the Asrock X399 Taichi motherboard, which you see there in the center. The XFX 5700 XT graphics card. Cooler master again for our power supply. This time the 750 full modular, just to keep things cool and quiet. Over the lower left, CPU cooler. You can't see it really well. It's the NHU9 TR4-SP3, which is something that I saw in Linus Tech Tips when he was building the Linus Torvalds Threadripper build. He used this cooler, or one very close to it, so I opted for that one. Wireless keyboard and mouse there. Yeah, so the build should be pretty straightforward once we start opening up stuff from a physical perspective. Now, whether or not I've selected everything correctly and everything works together under Fedora 32 is another question. And then, of course, what in the world do you plan to do with 16 cores or 32 processing threads? And hopefully in the future we will also get to that. All right, unbox the case. We've unboxed the power supply. We're going to start there, get the power supply mounted in the case. Yeah, Yoda, if you saw from my last video, he's my bench buddy. He did express some displeasure to me. Hard to see your workbench is from where he was the last time, or something like that. Better door than window you make. Something along those lines. I don't know. But so I figured we just gave him a better vantage point there. Hopefully he won't have too much more to say about anything. Anyway, yeah, getting the power supply into the case. This one is a full modular power supply, so none of the power connectors are actually kind of there like in the last one. I think this braided power connector was sort of permanently mounted in the case. This one is not so, but we will use this connector to connect to the power on the motherboard. This next one will be for the graphics card. We'll take probably that power connector, and then this one I believe is, yeah, this is the alternate CPU. No, this is the graphics card. This one is the PCI Express one, PCIe, and this one is the CPU power. So this one to the motherboard, this one will go to the motherboard, and then this one to the graphics card. And since the storage is will be directly connected to the motherboard, there won't be any more power cables needed for this build anyway. So if you remember from the last time, this backside, the glass is on the other side. This front, this backside is where we need to get into in order to put the power supply. So back in a second. All right, so I got the case opened up back here, and we have our power supply kind of turned around. So these are the two ports that we use for this main power cable that goes to the motherboard. It's got the big fat connector on the one end, and then these two connectors on the other end. There's a 10 pin connector, and a 18 pin connector, and those will go right here for the motherboard. The other two cables are very similar, so they plug into one of these three ports right here, CPU/PCIe. So there's three of those available This is our PCIe cable. It's the right label's actually on the other side, and it has the 8-pin connector on it, so it will go into one of those ports. This other one is the CPU connector, and so that one's a little bit, the pinouts for these are different on this side, so you don't want to get these switched around and plug the CPU one into your graphics card or otherwise. So they do both go into these ports, so I'll plug those in there, and we'll make sure that we use the correct cable on the other end. It's easier to plug them in now before I actually slide the power supply in there and bolt it up, because it's going to be kind of back in there like this. So I'll get the cables plugged in there now, and then we'll go with the next step. Okay, power supply is mounted. Went in fairly easily. These screws are a little bit tight, so you heard me on my previous video, I harp a lot on finding the threads and making sure you screw these in correctly. I did do that, but they still had a lot of resistance to them, but they went in fine. So just keep that in mind if you're doing this for yourself. All 4 of these cables will get plugged into this motherboard. The F panel, the audio, and the 2 USB headers will I anticipate we'll have homes on this motherboard. I haven't looked at the manual yet, but yeah. So I'll just leave all this loose. I'll end up putting the case aside, and then we'll start opening the motherboard box and getting some of those things ready. All right, got the board out. We have. I just want to go over the connectors and stuff on this board. I'm pretty impressed, actually. I pulled it out, and I'm pretty impressed at how heavy it is compared to the boards from 10 years ago or more. There is a lot going on in these modern boards. Pretty impressive. So it feels like it's made out of metal. Anyway, first thing before I go touching it and stuff, I would just want to say it's important to touch the board's ground. Its own ground bus, and it's very easy to do that just by touching some of this metal here on the connectors or whatever before you start touching anywhere in here, especially if you're going to make contact with the chips and the electronics and whatever. So I want to make sure that you've grounded yourself to the board so that you're the same potential. Let's start at the top edge here. You can see obviously CPU socket there, 8 slots for RAM. We'll be populating those later. We have the 2 power connectors, the main one and the CPU power connector over here that we'll be using. 5 or 4 PCI Express slots here. I'll be using, I think, just the first one. I'm not sure. We'll find out when we cross that bridge. SATA ports here. I won't be using any of those, but I will be using the M.2 connectors. There's 3 of those here, 1, 2, and 3, and I'll be using these first 2 here for my 2 modules that I plug in. There's some other connectors here as well that we'll be getting into, such as some of the headers down here, and we plug the case connections into some of those. And then of course the back panel over here, where we have the 2 Ethernet ports and some of the USB ports and audio ports and other stuff. And these are for the wireless antenna, so this has a built-in Wi-Fi adapter on it. I probably won't be using that. I'll probably be going wired, but we'll see. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is get probably the CPU out and unbox that guy, and then I will set him into this into his socket. So I'll be right back. Okay, as I was unpacking the CPU and looking through the instructions here, it came clear to me that I probably ought to unpack the cooler as well and sort of see how that goes. So as you can see, the cooler is pretty large, and it's going to overhang over the memory slots there a little bit. So I'm definitely going to have to install my memory first before I actually install the CPU cooler. It's just kind of sitting here right now. I just rested it right there. The other thing that you'll notice is these screws here go right directly into the socket assembly right there. So while there is some extra hardware there for other types of CPU coolers to mount on there. We won't be using that either, so that'll stay in the box. But yeah, this guy is going to have to wait until after I put memory in. So let's go with the CPU. So this guy, we need to pull out of his little case here. I'm going to have to unscrew those 3 screws there, 3, 2, 1, in that order, and lift up that socket, and then we'll slide the CPU in there and let it down. I'll try to get everything kind of set up so you guys can see it actually go into the socket. All right. So I've loosened up the screws. We're just going to lift this guy up here like this, and there is this plastic deal that's supposed to come out. See if I can figure out how to get it out here on the fly. There we go. Push this, lift it up. There we go. And this is supposed to come right out. If it's clipped in there in some way or something like that. First time doing this, so here we go. Just slides right out. Okay, so hopefully you guys saw that. This gets discarded, and the next thing is to get the CPU out and slide that in there. I'm going to do that off camera, but it's supposed to slide right down into this little carrier right here, and then we will push it down and rest it back in place, and then put the cover down and put the screws back on. Real quick, I wanted to show you the CPU here. I got it out of its packaging. You have to sort of, it took some doing to get it open, actually. I got the package open, and then this is mounted in a little plastic carrier. You want to be careful to make sure you hold it by the edges. Do not touch the contacts on the bottom. You want no foreign oils or anything like that from your hands getting on those. I notice they're not actually pins, they're flat contacts. Not like the CPUs of yesteryear. And I guess there's those contacts there are probably a little more raised up in nature. So let's see if I can get around here and get a better shot of that. That's what it's going to sit on. So we're going to figure out the orientation of this guy. So that gold triangle there is pin 1, and I need to align up pin 1 with wherever it is in that socket. Got to figure that out, and then I'm going to slide the CPU down into its little holder here. So let me figure that out. Did have a new movement there. You do leave it in this little tray that it's in, so I had to clip it back in there. This makes it a lot easier. It's already oriented according to how you're supposed to drop it in, and you just slide it like that. You see those little ridges right there go in that little black slide there on both sides. It slides in there really easy. Now that it's in there, it's very stable and it's not going anywhere. So we'll just push this down, and it should clip into place like that. And that is exactly where the CPU needs to be. We'll push this guy down, and then I'm going to screw this hole in place first, number 1, and then number 2 and number 3. Okay, so it's in. I tighten the screws. Do use this tool that comes with the CPU. It's got a built-in torque wrench in it, so as soon as it's tight enough, it clicks. You can hear it. It does that clicky thing, so it won't go any tighter than that without clicking, and that tells you that the CPU's in there just as tight as it needs to be. Okay, I'm going to move on to memory. Got the memory modules unpacked here. I've got the DIMM slots identified. A2, B2, C2, and D2 for a 4-DIMM setup. So those are the ones that you want to populate according to the manual. And again, I'm just, super impressed. These things are these are heavy compared to the DIMMs of yesteryear. So anyway, here we go. Let's see if we can slide these in. think that's all the way in. Let's see. Look like, yeah. I think it's appears to be fully seated. That's good. Okay, well, let's go to number 2. Good. All right. Well, so far so good. I'm gonna get the other ones in, and well, I'm sorry to say, run into my first problem with this kit. I don't seem to have the right CPU cooler assembly. This one, if you set it in here, you can see it doesn't meet the socket. It just sits right there on the DIMMs, and I don't really see a way around that. I mean, it's sitting on the cables right now. Even if I pulled the cables out, I'm not sure that it would. I'm not sure that it would fit in there correctly. I may have to order a different one, or I may end up pulling the fans off of that one and just having it sit in there in between without the fans. I don't know. I will decide and let you know. All right, good news, everyone. Those fans are adjustable, so I just bumped them up a few notches there, and now they clear the DIMMs nicely, and there's still even plenty of room there for air to flow around the DIMMs and everything like that to cool them as well. So, all right, dodged a bullet there. We will keep going. I'm going to put some thermal paste down and get that mounted. All right. Well, got my thermal paste on. It looks pretty close to what they called for, I guess. Kind of gushed out for me on the first one there at the upper right, but that should be pretty good. I'm going to sort of, and by the way, the instructions, I should have read them. They do say also to remove the fan, so we put the heatsink on, and so heatsink would have gone on, and I would have figured out that you can remount the fans with plenty of clearance. So sorry for the false alarm. Okay, so we are mounted. Looks like I didn't do too bad on the thermal paste. Probably a little too much in there. If I go around this other side, you know, it oozed out a little bit. It's not too bad, but I think we're okay. And the fans are mounted. Those aren't too high. I think we have enough width in this case to be able to tolerate that difference there. Yeah, let's move forward. Let's find out where I need to plug these fans in. Make sure that I have 4 ports and not just only 3. They did give us a Y cable for these in case we need to we only have 3 fan ports available, but I'll check that out here real quick. Heatsink is fully installed. Got it plugged in. There's that's the second CPU fan connector. The first CPU fan connector is there. I did wire so that the left fan here goes to the first one. If for some reason the system wants to just power the one fan instead of both, I would rather pull air through the heatsink rather than pushing it. So anyway, that's why I routed that one over here, and I have this one over to the second connector. So that's how we'll run. Next up, let's see. So we've got memory, CPU, heatsink. Okay, we're going to do the M.2s next. So let me get those unpacked. Okay, got the M.2s unpacked. Here they are. NVMe 500 gig and Samsung 970 EVOs. Yeah. So there you are. So we're going to slot those in right. So there's my first NVMe slot right there, and then I got another one right here. We're not going to use this third one. That's number 3. So we're going to use these first 2. And it looks like yeah, I've got screw holes in the right place for them. So basically you just you can see where the connector is there, and it's keyed, and so we'll stick it right into that slot, and we'll just push it in, kind of lay it down almost, and just stick it in horizontally, not at an angle or anything, almost laying flat, and then we'll put a screw in right there to hold it in place. Those screws came with the motherboard. They're actually in another package over here. So I'll get that done and we'll be right back. And there they are. So installed those little screws, came with a little bit of Loctite on them. So all you have to do is stick them in there and find the threads and give them almost like, not even a full turn almost. It was just, they're little, short little screws. But yeah, those slid right in there, and just a little bit of force, and they clicked in, and put the screw in, and away we go. So, all right, so let's, I think we're about ready to mount the board. So let's get the case turned around, and so I pulled the board out of the rest of the packaging so I could show you where the screw holes are. It's an ATX form factor motherboard, but it does have one more screw that wasn't always there, and that's this, not this one, but this second one up here. There's only 9 screw holes, 3 at the bottom, 3 along the center, and then 3 along the top edge back there. This one is an extra one, and maybe that's a common one these days or whatever, but it doesn't have a standoff available in the case. So if I go over here to the case, which I've turned around, I did get the I/O panel installed that came with the motherboard. That's an important one to get installed. It just pops right in there, so you just have to use 2 hands and kind of snap it in from the inside. Make sure it's obviously the right direction so that it lines up with the way that your ports are going to go, because you need that. Okay, so it's kind of dark in here, but you can see at the bottom edge here, 1, 2, 3 standoffs, and then an next row up here, 1. And there's a pin here that doesn't get a screw. That actually helps to hold the board in while you're trying to get in. And then a 3rd row here. So what you see on this side though is there's a hole here with a thread in it for another standoff for that extra screw hole. So I'm gonna need to put another standoff there. The case did come with an extra standoff, so all I need to do is just install it. And then after I do that, I will lift the board in and stick it in there and get it basically. Its connectors in here. There's little springs on here that will push on it, and then I'll get that hole lined up here with this pin, and then that pin will just sort of between the friction that's provided from the spring tension there will hold the board in place temporarily while we then put the screws in. Okay, so let's grab this. I'm going to grab by the heat sink here. Man, this guy's heavy. It's amazing. All right, so we're gonna sort of gently see if I can get back here a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So I'm trying to get the I/O ports to line up here. I think I'm close. I think I'm, yeah, there we go. There we go. Let's see if I can get that pin under here to line up. There we go. Popped right in there. Now you can see, let me try to get a good angle on it. There it is. You can see that pin right here, sticking through that hole, and it's holding the board. It's holding the board in place for me. My I/O lined up. Yep. Okay, so now it's time to turn some screws and get it mounted in there. All right, we are all mounted. All the screws are in. I did struggle with a few of them that didn't want to line up, especially this one up here in this corner. I had to lay the box down and get some needle nose pliers there to get that screw exactly down. You can't see it real good in that spot where it needs to be right in there. That's okay. A little bit of struggle is not a bad thing. So, but everything lined up and everything's mounted in there. So let's get this turned around. So we'll turn the case around so we can start routing some of the other cables here. So yeah, I had tucked all this stuff in for getting laying it down and getting the screws in there. So let's just go and review our cable situation here. So we have a few things that we're going to need to do. Okay. All right. So one more here. Okay. First off, the big fat daddy right here has got to go in, and he needs to be sort of routed up through this stuff and kind of poked through the other side in a neat way, so he's in there. The second thing is this guy, the CPU power. I think he's going to also go up that way because there's the CPU power auxiliary connectors up on this side of the board on the other side as well. Not quite sure where this one's going to land. Probably down under here. Maybe, I'm not sure. Or maybe over here. I really should probably look at the graphics card before I really run this one. So I'll probably save this one for later. So that's power. And the rest of these down here, I actually need to go find the headers on the other side and route them appropriately along with the fans. So this fan and this fan. And then just basically, find the shortest path to wherever they need to go, and get them tied up and everything. And then once I have those tied in there and kind of routed where I want, I'll remove the twisties and replace them with some of the tie wraps, the plastic tie wraps that came. So I don't have any of these in here because these have metal in them, and I don't want to leave those in there. That's it. And so when I'm done, I'll come back. Well, I hope I didn't jinx myself. I think I've connected all of the power connectors and all the other motherboard connectors except for this one for the graphics card because I haven't mounted that yet. Looks pretty good, and I'll turn it around the other way so you can kind of see the other side of it. So very tidy. I guess you can just turn it around here. There we go. See the main power connectors here. Let's see. There's a chassis fan connector that came over here. Another chassis fan connector down here. The HD audio connector you see over here. Let's see. USB header, front panel, LEDs and power switch and whatnot. Yeah, and I think we're pretty good there, and everything's sort of tied down, and I'm not exactly sure how the graphics card's going to sit, so we'll see exactly where that power connector comes in here in a sec. Yeah, let me crack open the graphics adapter and then we'll take a look at it. Good grief. Look at this sucker. And this is just like a upper mid-range card these days, and it's just huge. I remember the days when graphics adapters were about this big and yay long. And this sucker is just amazing. Look at that. It's so big. Anyway, let me get it out of the bag here. Do it one-handed while I hold my phone with the other hand. Wow. So, two I/O ports worth of width there. Looks like I'm gonna have to take two of these panels off, and it looks like it'll be these two right here that'll come out. And so I'll have to remove these two screws to pull this panel off, and then remove those with a screw here and a screw here. Take those out, and then that should slot right in there. Let's look for the power connector. Looks like I may have to. Looks like there's some protective plastic on here too that'll film that. Yeah, there's definitely a film on here that'll pull that off too. And edge connector protector here. Make sure we pull that off. But it looks like Yeah, there's no, so that's the connector, and it won't impede on anything else in the system. There's our fan intake or air intake there, and maybe, no, it's like air comes in the front. Yeah, and it'll get exhausted. Run through there, and I guess it'll get exhausted on either side. That's what happens there. You don't necessarily push the air completely out the back. So anyway, you'll find out. Okay. I'll go ahead and get everything set up. I'll lay the case down, I think, so we can just sort of drop it in, vertically, and maybe I'll be able to sort of have the camera on while I do that. So, okay, well, there it is. And a graphics card this size, I know they're typical these days, but I guess I'm just showing my age and the fact that it's been a while since I built the system, brand new. And that thing is just, to me, is just enormous. And I know you can, this has got SLI in it, so you can actually stack up to 3 of these in here, and get extra performance out of it, or for extra, GPU processing and those kinds of things. And maybe I'll do that someday, but I'm just super impressed. Sorry, it took 2 hands to get it in there, and I couldn't film myself doing it, but there it is. This has 3 HDMI ports and then 1 display port, so I'll be hooking that up in the other room to a number of monitors, which is going to be great. So let me get it stud back up. I'm going to figure out how to run this power cable so that it's kind of out of the way and not kind of sticking out weird, and it'll plug in to these 2 power jacks right here. I'm going to need both connectors, it looks like. So I'll be right back. There she is, fully built. So everything's in there, put together. Power cable, routed it right through there, and both connectors plugged in. So all I got to do is see if it'll fire up now, and I gotta get a monitor and unpack my keyboard and stuff, and see what we get. I got it plugged in, and I do have maybe an issue here. So I turn the power on here real quick, just flick the switch on, and you can see things start coming to life. The motherboard starts to power on. The system's not booting yet because I haven't actually turned it on. I've got light bars on the RAM, which I don't necessarily care about, but they're there. But that bar on the RAM that's underneath that fan is not lighting up. So I may have a dead dim on my hands, or I may just have a dead light bar, which is kind of annoying more than anything. But looks like I'll have to return the memory and either way, and maybe get it replaced. But maybe running with half my memory for a little while. That's okay. 32 gigs is okay. 64 is how much I have, so we'll just milk it along with 32 for about a week until this gets resolved, if anything. But anyway, let me get that keyboard and monitor here. See if it actually boots up. All right, got the monitor and keyboard set up here. So yeah, let's just fire it up. So there's a little power button right here on the motherboard I can use to. Okay, so we're posting. We're doing self-tests and stuff. Let's see what the monitor says. So that light bar still isn't working, but it's just blinked. Maybe it'll start working. I don't know. All right, so this is a good sign. It's looking for a boot device. So I think I'm going to call this a successful build. What do you think? Let me see if I can get an operating system installed. Well, aside from the light bar not working on that RAM stick, I think we're in good shape. See all 32 CPU cores are represented in Performance Monitor. And I just updated a bunch of software. And so looks like Fedora's running, and we're in in good shape. So I just wanted to show you guys, I opted to move off of Fedora and instead to install Linux Mint. Linux Mint with the Cinnamon UI is a Linux distribution. It's a derivative of Ubuntu, and it's actually, out of the 4 distributions I tried, it is the most pleasant and well put together user experience. At my age, I have little tolerance for user experiences that don't work very well or clunky. And both still, even Ubuntu has got its quirks, and it wasn't recognizing my displays correctly and some other things that are going on with that system. Linux Mint is very friendly, and I've opted to stay with that. So wanted to show you guys that, and then also wanted to sort of, I've got it hooked up to 3 displays here. So there's this display up here. My graphics card has 4 ports in it, 3 display ports and 1 HDMI, and so I've got that hooked up to the television up here. If you look there, you can see several records of a data set that I have imported into Couchbase 6.6 Enterprise Edition, which is free to download and use. Here on the, I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. You see this data set here has it's Chicago crime data, and there at the bottom you see that result from WC-L. There's 7.179 million records here for Chicago crime data. Each one of those lines represents a single record, and what I've done is I've taken that data set and imported it, and you can see there on the lower right there's my system monitor there, which shows you how cool my CPU is running there. The temp there on the right side, right below the AMD logo, it says it's running about 30 degrees centigrade right now, which is great. If I go down to this screen, so here you can see I actually am running on this screen the Couchbase web UI here on the right with the analytics query editor there running, and I'm actually running the analytics engine. You can see this query here against the data set. It's basically asking the data set, what types of crimes do you have, and how many of them do you have, and can you give me that whole list sorted in descending order by how many of each crime you have. And that's what we have right here. So we have theft at the top with 1.51-ish at the top there with the most, and then battery, and then criminal damage. And you see this query here took 1.21 seconds to run. And we're talking about processing over 7 million records in 1.21 seconds. And so you can see here on the left, this is HTOP, and this is, you can see all of my cores there doing stuff. And you can see down here the records that I actually imported. And it took me about a minute and a half to get all these records in there into Couchbase, which is really a great result. I ended up running it across, you can see the -T option at the end of my CBM port there, 16 threads I used in order to get it in there, which is why it went so fast. But if I click this execute button, it's hard to see my mouse here, so you can see this execute button here. I'm going to execute this query again so you can see see the CPUs work. All in parallel, watch. Boom. And that's how I get that query result. All those CPUs were running in parallel across those millions of documents. And again, 1.2 seconds there for the elapsed time. So, and to answer your question, what do I do with 16 cores and 32 threads? This is one of the things that I'm doing with it. And hopefully you found that interesting. Well, that's it for this one. It was a successful build, and I just want to thank everybody for watching. If you have any requests or comments, you know what to do. If you like the video, obviously like it and share it, and show people kind of what's going on. I know most people build computers like this for gaming and those kinds of things, and I don't know to say I don't play a game from time to time, but it's really great to do this kind of work where we can ask sophisticated questions of a system and have it work. But I didn't show you also is that I'm also running a couple of virtual machines on here. I'm also running several Docker containers. So it all run just fine, and it makes no noise. So anyway, yeah, just leave your comments and feedback, and if you guys want to see anything else from me in the future, let me know. In the meantime, I'll probably be doing more stuff with this, and perhaps I'll get it set up to actually do proper video captures here shortly, and we can do some more work on the software side, and I can show you how to do some of this stuff. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.